This is the story of a man who gave up the sea in search of the shadows beneath it, a retired Royal Navy officer in search of sinker logs, also called bogwood. He used this 130 for his search in the muddy unknown to be able to find the wood to build his craft and his legacy. This is Bramwell. Hi, this is Lucy and I'm Paul, and today we're going to talk about Bramwell, the 130. Before I get into the specifics of this Helderburg build, let me tell you a little bit of history about the 130 in general. So first of all, the 130 stands for 130 inches from center of axle to center of axle, and this is the pickup version. There was also a wagon version. So this is the largest vehicle of the lineup when it comes to classic Land Rover Defenders, and one of my favorites. So it is a true pickup truck, and a lot of times this vehicle gets confused with a 110 double cab because they are both pickup trucks. The easiest way to tell the difference is a 130 has a separate bed on the back versus the 110 is a unibody. So the bed on a 130 is very usable. It's a 6-foot bed. You can haul your motorcycle, you can put whatever you want to put into it, just like you were going to in an F-150 or an F-250 Ford or a Chevy or whatever it is. Except, in my opinion, it's much cooler than any mass-produced car. So the 130's use was often used for utility companies, military, logging companies. It was a hard-working vehicle. Therefore, there's just not many of them in existence. They were used so hard and abused so hard as commercial vehicles, many of them are beyond restoration. And they were very rarely seen in the civilian market. Well, this one was a little different. Captain Bramwell was the owner of this vehicle. He was a retired Royal Navy officer, and he wanted to build his next legacy, his second calling, which was woodworking, but specifically doing gunstocks. And he'd heard over the years of different places where bogwood was still existing, sinker logs more or less. That's wood that's been underwater for hundreds of years, which that type of wood is known for some of the best wood that you can work with because of all of the color, the tannins that it's taken on, all the organisms, because it gives a very vibrant color. This is the vehicle he used to get into the muddy unknown to be able to find those sinker logs to start building that legacy. So this one's been used, but it's definitely not been used like a fire truck or a military truck. So when we got it originally, it was in really good condition. In fact, it was in such great condition that William, my partner, when he found it and he drove several hours, actually 1,000 kilometers to get it back to the shop, and that's all he could talk about was how wonderful it was. But that didn't keep us from stripping it down all the way to the frame and rebuilding the frame and then rebuilding it all the way up. This one has some pretty neat, let's just say some pretty neat components in it that I'm going to talk about a little more. But the first thing I want to talk about is the color. This color has been so popular. And if you haven't seen Dieter, the 110 wagon on Helderburg.com, go see that. This is the same color as Dieter, and in fact, I've got another 110 that's coming very soon that will be the same color as Dieter and the same color as this. So again, very popular color, a color that you have to see in person. But I always say that you have to see a Helderburg in person because the pictures and videos do not do it justice. The best way to explain this color is it's gray, but it's green. It's not a metallic paint, and let me say that again. It's a gray, but it's a green color. Depending on the light that's around and the surrounding, like where I'm around the green grass and the green trees in the background, it's picking up more of that green. But if I am out on the pavement, it will pick up more gray. It's a military-esque color, but it's also a sophisticated color, and it is definitely a timeless color because this color originally, very similar to it at least, was on the Porsche 356 in 1953. So it's an old color, but it's timeless. All right, so let's talk about the lift. I mean, I think that's very apparent. It's a 130 and it is lifted, almost 3 inches of lift. And one of the things that we did, it does have Fox shocks, but the gentleman I built this for, he loves performance cars. He has a lot of sports cars, and he already has a Helderburg in his garage. This is going to be his next Helderburg, but the shocks, being Fox shocks, had to had to be a step up, of course. So these are a dual reservoir shock. So there's two canisters. There's the main shock, and then there's another canister. This vehicle is designed to go across the desert, go across Moab, and it can just go for hours and hours and hours without the shocks overheating and failing, giving out. And just to take it up a little further, the bushings that we ran through it. They're a high performance bushing, which gives you that very nice feel on the road, but also gives you tremendous handling off-road. And then moving around front, since we're talking about shocks, I might as well talk about the steering dampener too. The steering dampener is a different design. It's a Dobson design, which is a dual reservoir in addition, but it also has an additional spring mechanism. The beauty of that, what it does is it keeps those front wheels very stable in the craziest conditions as that suspension's working on uneven terrain. Moving around the front, of course, it does have the Helderburg grille, which is the metal made in Germany grille. It has the billet aluminum surrounds and, of course, the broken beam halo headlights that are basically a staple, a standard for a Helderburg build. And then let me just stand here for a minute and see if you notice anything different, just for a minute. I'm pretty excited about this one, as you can tell. Maybe right here. So originally, when I designed this build for the client, it had our standard bumper that you would see. And I wouldn't say it's a standard, it's very unique, where it tips up and it's got the holes on the front. And we did this bumper for Dragon, which if you haven't seen Dragon, that's my personal 130, then go to the website, find it. It's a very vibrant metallic gold with a copper underbase. It's a beautiful color, you have to see it. So this bumper and this winch was destined to be on Dragon, and so was the roof basket. But then when the client seen it, he said, I have to have that too. I'm like, no problem, we'll do that. So the winch is a work of art that just complements the Helderburg build itself. It's billet aluminum, and when I say billet aluminum, this is not like a Warren winch. A Warren winch, made in the States, nice winch, but this is a whole entire level, probably 10 notches up from a Warren winch. And Warren is basically the staple, the benchmark when it comes to winches, but not when you compare it to this winch. Again, billet aluminum has the red billet aluminum pieces, which complement the hook really well and also complement some of the other elements onto the build too. The bumper, talk about solid. This is some solid piece of kit right here. So if a Prius gets in the way or any modern vehicle, that vehicle is going to be total. Let's just put it that way. All right, so just taking it all in. Let's talk about the engine. So the engine is our SV version, special vehicle operation. To give you a little detail on that, Land Rover had a special department called Special Vehicle Operation, and that's where they would build military vehicles or special order vehicles. It was a different shop. That's all they did was very custom, interesting work. In fact, one of the things that they did is they built a turbo diesel engine. It was based on the 300 TDI, which is a turbo diesel, mechanical fuel injection, no computer. But they took that 300 TDI because the military said, we need something even more. We want more. We want something to be able to tow. We want something that's faster. So they created a really hopped up 300 TDI. So it went from the normal 2.5 liter up to the 2.8 liter. And the way that happened was bigger pistons, different internals, different turbo, different intercooler. Well, we got our hands on some original SV engines, 300 TDI base, and we disassembled them and said, all right, what did they do in here? Let's see what they actually did. We found out what they did, so then we started manufacturing our own parts and we took it up 2 more notches. That's what this has. So this vehicle can climb like a billy goat. Of course, all Land Rovers can when it comes to the classic Land Rovers, but it's also a pleasure to drive on the highway. It goes up hills, no problem, and it can definitely, absolutely tow. So 300 TDI, except it's a 2.8 liter with all of the additional elements that we want it to have. It has our own custom cylinder head, it has our own custom internals, it has our own custom intercooler, it has a VNT turbo, it has a 3-inch stainless steel exhaust all the way through that gives it a nice deep throaty sound. It's just pure magic. And then of course we did the louvers on the bonnet. The louvers on the bonnet, what we've started doing, this signifies anytime you see louvers on a bonnet that this is a performance tuned engine, whether it's our Mark 3.5 or this one, the 2.8 liter that does a great job. So the question is, what does it drive like? Well, in fact, I've done a video like that, and I'm going to try to attach it down here below to be able to, so you can watch and see what does a Helderburg drive like. But I'll just give you a quick glimpse into what does it drive like. It drives beautifully. You put it on the highway, you go. You give it fuel, it goes. You can pass people, you can climb hills. It drives like a modern SUV. It's as simple as that. However, it does have the aerodynamics of a cinder block, so you do pick up some of that noise, even though we have thicker glass on the windshield, thicker glass on the side. A lot of sound deadening, of course, on all Helderbergs. I mean, everything is sound deadened. This does not sound like your typical rebuilt classic Land Rover or an unrebuilt classic Land Rover, because they quite honestly sound like a Coke can. So a lot of sound deadening, and then of course, the little subtle touches, like the billet aluminum door handles that have the finger grooves, the billet aluminum hinges, and the interior is something that is magical. And in fact, I'm really glad that the client let me do this interior, because I wanted to do this interior on Dieter and didn't get a chance to do that, but I got to do it here. So with all this additional engine power, I mean, it's important to be able to stop. I think that's just a given. So this does have the custom Helderburg brakes. And to clarify, these are not Brimbos that have a Helderburg logo on it. These are custom milled, custom designed brakes. The caliper in the front is a monster caliper. That thing is like this huge. It has 6 pistons in it. 6 pistons meaning that you've got more power to compress the pistons down onto the actual rotors, which the rotors are cross-drilled too. So a lot of stopping power in the front, and then of course a lot of stopping power in the rear, because those are huge calipers, again, cross-drilled rotors. So not only did we need the bigger brakes because of the additional power in the vehicle, this vehicle at 130, a classic 130, has a lot of weight behind it. Again, keep in mind, this was a work vehicle. This was a military vehicle, a logging truck vehicle. It was the go anywhere, do everything vehicle. I mean, this is like one step below a Mercedes-Benz Unimog. And if you haven't seen a Unimog, that's also an interesting vehicle, which that's not drivable on the highway. This is drivable on the highway. And what I'm talking about, the weight. This is well over 6,000 pounds. So if you're a business owner and you're saying, oh, I'd like to get a vehicle and I'd like to be able to write it off on taxes with the Section 179 tax write-off, yeah, this vehicle is absolutely going to hit that over 6,000 pound limit. So not saying that I've done the write-off, but I plan to do it this year since I do have Dragon. Again, you can see that on helderburg.com. So the side profile of a 130, when it has the roll cage and has the basket, is quite impressive. And in fact, with the roll cage, we're right at about 89, 90 inches in height. But again, the basket on top just really kind of sets it off, makes it look completely different when it's mounted to the roll cage. Talking about the roll cage, this is a functional roll cage. This is unlike what you normally see. A lot of times when you see a classic Land Rover that's been redone, the roll cage is just attached to the body. It's not a true functional roll cage. This is a Helderburg. It's a true functional roll cage. We cut through the wings up here, and then there's a bar. It goes all the way to the frame that is bolted and tack welded to the frame. So functional at this point and functional at this point. So if you are out four-wheeling, if you're out looking for sinker logs like Captain Bramwell, and you roll this over on a really, crazy muddy terrain, well, you've got the protection here too. And then when the roll cage moves back, it creates a really nice point to mount the spare tire. I just personally don't like the spare tire hanging off the rear tailgate. It just looks odd as it's bouncing around back there. But it also makes the bed not as functional because you're having to roll that tire out, fold the tailgate down. It just doesn't seem well. So over here it fits perfectly, and it just takes up the side room behind the wheel well. So again, it's a perfect fit. But moving back, I already talked about the dual reservoir Fox shocks, which are also in the rear too. Custom radius arms, custom prop shafts, heavy duty transmission, has transmission heavy duty clutch of course too, but it does have the soft clutch. So that's just a different spring that's inside the clutch that you're able to depress this clutch with 2 to 3 fingers. It's that easy. And talking about transmissions, which we're going to get into the interior, but I'll just say this is a 5-speed manual transmission. Yes, we offer an automatic transmission, but I've had more clients that's never driven a manual transmission, and then they come visit us at one of the locations and they take one for a drive, because after about 10 minutes I've been able to teach them how to drive a manual transmission, and they said, that's a lot of fun. I think I want to do the manual transmission because I already have a lot of other cars in the garage, and I want it for the nostalgia. So there you go. There's a lot to look at here, and I don't know. I don't know if I love the color or the body style or what the most. I think it just all works. I wish you could be here with me just to be able to touch the leather. Just feeling this leather is really interesting, and how we put everything together in the cabin. The seats themselves in this nice burgundy, and I know it's not going to look as beautiful on the video that you're watching right now as it does in person, because this is a deep, deep merlot color. It's not a bright red, even though it might look that way in the pictures and the videos. It's a very regal color. Which brings me to the point, since you can't really honestly tell how beautiful everything is with this deep merlot, soft glove-like leather that is very thick, and then we go to the dash with a really thick textured black leather, and then the merlot leather here, and then the contrasting stitch that goes through. And when you're looking at this cabin, everything looks like it flows. It looks like this was a very high-end factory build, but you just know that there's something much, much different, that it's so custom. So if you are seriously considering commissioning a custom Defender build by anyone, you really owe it to yourself to just come visit us and see a Helderburg in person, because we've had thousands of people over the years see it in person, go, I knew it was beautiful, but I had no idea how beautiful it was, and how the lines are so perfect and the stitches are so perfect. And then when they drive it, they're like, oh my gosh, I know I've heard about all of this engine swap stuff, but driving this diesel and feeling the power and the torque and hearing the throaty sound of it is quite magical. So I'll just leave you with that. And let me talk a little bit about the interior. I've already talked about the deep merlot burgundy color with the matching stitch and the diamond stitch here. The seats are heated. They have a lumbar support. The center cubby here has USB power, so USB standard, USB-C, cup holders, and then there's power inside. This is a steel cubby box. So you can put valuables in here and lock it up. It's bolted to the body of the vehicle. It does have a high fidelity sound system, not the top level, but the mid-range level, and it sounds beautiful. The tweeters in the dash are the Utopia Focals, or Focal Utopias. They're the beryllium tweeters, and they make quite the difference. The highs are high, but they're not a tinny high. They're a good sounding high. And then you move down to the lower part here where the air conditioning is out. These are custom made Focal, made in France, speakers specific for a Helderburg. And then in the front of the seat boxes right here, again, Focals in the seat boxes. It has dual amplifiers. It has a custom subwoofer box. It's a magical sound system. And then the touchscreen probably looks a little big in the video, but it just matches perfectly. It's the right size. It's a nice large size. It also gives you some information about the vehicle. And then just I mentioned it's a 5-speed manual, but one of the things that we did is we did the shorter gaiter, meaning the boot here on the shifter, and then the actual shift rod itself is chromed out, so it matches all of the little subtle things, whether it be the window cranks that are also billet aluminum. I use the word chromed, but it's a little different. But anyway, billet aluminum window cranks, billet aluminum door pulls, billet aluminum inside door handles with the finger grooves. And then moving up to the headliner, it's a black Italian Alcantara suede. It has the LED lighting, the courtesy lights in here. It has hands-free calling built into the headliner. It's quite magical in this interior, but it's also comfortable. This is the type of with the suspension, the power of the engine, the design of the seats, the sound deadening, you could take this on a road trip. This could be an all-day driving vehicle where you would get out and still feel fresh. It brings a smile to my face. So that's the interior, that's the exterior. This is Bramwell, and before I close this video out, there's one thing in here that's different than what you normally see on a Helderburg, but I just thought it would be the perfect touch. And this one is void of the wood steering wheel. I did it in a black leather wrap just to complement the interior. So in the second row of a 130, it does give you a little more leg room, passenger-wise. But on this 130, normally what I do is I do 2 seats and a center console. But again, on this 130, I did 3 seats instead of 2 seats and a center console, just to give more room. The seats also do fold all the way forward, so it does give you a flat spot here. And then when you fold the seats back, guess what? You are able to see more of the high fidelity sound system in here with the made in France Focal speakers here, the subwoofer back here. But again, it just gives you more room to be able to transport stuff if you want to. In fact, I have a client that has a 130 and he created a shelf system that went back here for his dog to be able to go, because his dog is really huge, Irish Wolfhound. But anyway, 3-row seating is the one option, or 2 seats and a center console is another option. And then ultimately you could just decide to do no seats if you wanted to, and you could just do a bench. So a lot of room. Seating for 5. Again, this is Bramwell, the 130. See more pictures on helderburg.com.